Welcome back to the deep dive. If you've been paying attention, the 21st century feels, well, like a constant barrage of shifting information, technological shockwaves,
It
too.
really does.
We are all wrestling with these huge questions about AI, political polarization, and just, how to maintain any sense of stability. How do we make sense of all this chaos?
That is the core mission for this deep dive,
Yeah.
really. We've pulled together the essential wisdom from a collection of insights focusing on exactly that challenge. Think of it as Yuval Noah Harari's framework for surviving the next few decades.
Okay.
The goal is basically to equip you with the knowledge to understand your unique place in
Mm.
this rapidly changing world and hopefully avoid being completely overwhelmed.
Right. Overwhelmed is the word.
We're looking for those fundamental lessons, the things you really need to know about the future of work, data ownership, global stability, all the big ones.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We should probably start where the disruption feels most immediate, most visceral, the workplace, and that intersection of technology and power.
Makes sense.
The sources are incredibly clear on what they call lesson two. We need to seriously confront the possibility of a future where, well, traditional employment is massively reduced. Automation and AI are changing the job market fundamentally.
And what's really critical here, I think, is that this isn't just the Industrial Revolution all over again.
How so?
Well, in the past, machines replaced human muscle, right?
Yeah.
Physical jobs disappeared, sure, but thinking jobs actually multiplied. Now we're seeing AI replacing thinking jobs.
Ah, cognitive labor.
Exactly. Think about roles like uh, paralegals, specialized market analysts, data entry managers, even some medical diagnostics like radiology. These are intellectual jobs where AI can potentially do the tasks cheaper, faster, and maybe even more accurately.
So the threat has shifted from manual labor to cognitive labor. That's a huge change.
It is, and it makes retraining significantly harder. I mean, if a coal miner loses their job, maybe they can retrain as a truck driver or perhaps a coder. But what happens if a coder loses their job to an AI that codes better? What uniquely human intellectual skill is left that's protected?
That's quite a question.
It really opens up this potential threat, doesn't it? A massive population of economically, well, useless people
Hmm.
who somehow need to be maintained or managed by the elites controlling the algorithms.
That sets a pretty terrifying context. And this massive tech shift connects immediately, I suppose, to what the sources say about data and surveillance. That takes us straight into lessons three and four.
Right. And this is where it gets really interesting because the power of AI,
Yeah.
it comes from one resource data, and it gives AI the potential to know us better than we know ourselves.
How does that work in practice?
Well, think about it. We're generating data constantly. It's like the air we breathe online now.
Hmm.
And it's not just your purchase history anymore.
No.
No, it's everything. Your tone of voice in a meeting, maybe captured by smart speakers, your heart rate variations tracked by your watch, all of it. This comprehensive data profile lets governments and companies not just predict your behavior,
And actually manipulate it.
precisely,
Yeah.
actively manipulate your choices.
Could you maybe elaborate on that difference? Predicting versus manipulating sounds like a subtle but really crucial distinction.
It is crucial. Prediction means, say, knowing you're likely to click on a certain ad based on past behavior.
Mm.
Manipulation. That's different. That's designing a specific personalized narrative, maybe a fear-based article or a perfectly tailored news feed, that basically guarantees you click that ad or vote a certain way.
But it knows your weak spots.
Exactly. Because the AI knows your emotional weaknesses, your biases, your fears. It can target them with surgical precision. The sources suggest it could know your personality better than your spouse does, maybe even better than you do.
Wow. Okay, so in the past, people fought for political rights, the right to vote, free speech. But now the battle is shifting. It's also about data rights, isn't it?
That's the argument. If we lose control of our inner lives, our information, our data, we risk losing the fundamental freedom we thought we had.
But hang on, if the AI really does know me better than I know myself, how is fighting for data rights like the right to be forgotten or the right to see my data profile? How is that even realistic? Isn't the battle maybe already lost?
That is precisely the huge, uncomfortable question these sources force us to confront. Harari suggests this fight for data rights is the defining political struggle of the century, whether it feels achievable right now or not.
Why so fundamental?
Because data could become more valuable than anything else, more than land, more than oil, more than gold. And the centralization of this power, this massive data pool, could dramatically worsen inequality.
How would that work? What's the mechanism for inequality there?
Well, it's not just about money, though that's part of it. It's about access, opportunity. If a small group, Silicon Valley elites, maybe some authoritarian governments control the algorithms.
They control the gates.
They control who gets loans, who gets a job interview, who gets steered towards certain education tracks. The algorithms, which are basically black boxes to most of us, could automatically filter opportunities away from people without the right digital footprint or access. It leaves the rest of us potentially powerless, controlled by these opaque tech systems.
That definitely paints a picture of serious global instability, political friction waiting to happen. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Move from that internal technology threat to the external political structures, how nations interact.
Right. And here we have to confront lesson one. The sources strongly suggest we absolutely cannot take freedom and democracy for granted. It sounds obvious, maybe, but it isn't.
Why not?
For decades after the Cold War, there was this sort of expectation that democracy was the inevitable endpoint for all nations. History was moving in one direction.
Yeah, I remember that feeling.
But that assumption is being seriously challenged now all over the world. Nationalism is back, populism is rising.
And the role of technology here is, well, it's paradoxical, isn't it? We thought the internet would be this great equalizer, a tool for liberation, connecting protesters, bringing down dictatorships.
We did. But the reality, according to these insights, has often been the opposite. Technology has sometimes made it easier for certain governments to control their citizens.
Oh,
Think about sophisticated surveillance systems, things like social credit scores, widespread facial recognition. These tools give state power the ability to track, categorize, and subtly penalize dissent on a scale that was just impossible a generation ago. The system becomes pervasive. It makes rebellion incredibly difficult because every interaction is potentially logged.
so if the tech is centralizing power in some ways,
Yeah.
and the political mood is pushing towards nationalism, decentralizing cooperation,
Hmm.
what does that mean for global stability? This seems like the paradox in Lesson 7. Global challenges versus rising nationalism.
Exactly. We face these massive problems: climate change, potential pandemics, runaway inequality. These are inherently global problems. They require global solutions. I mean, no national border is going to stop a virus or a rising sea level, right?
Obviously not. And yet, we see this huge cultural pushback, this growing wave of nationalism that actively prevents the teamwork we need.
It does. It forces politicians to focus only on local issues, local voters. They can't easily commit to costly, maybe unpopular international solutions, even if those solutions benefit the entire species long term.
It creates this impossible gridlock.
It really does. Nations are still vital, of course, for identity, for community, but they
Yeah.
simply don't have the capacity to solve these existential threats on their own. We need global solidarity more than ever, and we seem to be getting the opposite.
Speaking of existential issues, let's tackle one that's always in the news: terrorism, covered in Lesson 10. We often see terrorism as this immediate, massive threat to our way of life.
And Harari offers a really important perspective check here. While terrorism is horrific, absolutely, the sources suggest we shouldn't overreact, statistically speaking.
And he's not the biggest killer.
Far from it. Far more people die from things like car accidents or diabetes or even poor air quality than from terrorism.
So, why does it take up so much of our attention, our political energy?
Because terrorism is fundamentally theater. Its goal isn't really physical destruction, which is usually pretty small scale compared to, say, a war. Its main goal is psychological.
To scare
To
us.
scare people, yeah. To provoke mass hysteria, get attention, dominate the news cycle. And the insight here is, if a society manages to maintain its composure, stays calm, refuses to let fear dictate its political response.
Doesn't overspend on security theater or immediately restrict civil liberties.
Exactly. If we don't overreact, the terrorists lose their ultimate source of power. Their main weapon isn't the bomb, it's our reaction to the bomb.
That's a powerful way to think about it, psychological warfare. But that necessary calmness feels hard to maintain when you consider Lesson 11, which reminds us that simple human mistakes, even just plain stupidity, can still lead to massive unintended disasters, especially in a world armed with nukes or bioengineered viruses.
Absolutely. We might be technologically advanced, incredibly so, but we're still governed by human judgment, human vanity, human error. In the 20th century, we came terrifyingly close to nuclear war purely through miscalculation and misunderstanding.
Several times.
Several times. And when you combine that human fragility with technology capable of mass destruction, whether it's war or maybe environmental collapse caused by short-sightedness, even a small mistake by a powerful leader could lead to absolute catastrophe. It just raises the stakes of political judgment to an unprecedented level.
Okay, so if the world is this complex, defined by data concentration, shifting politics, existential risks,
Hmm.
how do you, the individual listener, how do you adapt? Let's shift focus now to that personal toolkit. Resilience, both intellectual and emotional.
Right. And we probably need to start with intellectual honesty. That's lesson 15, the critical power of admitting ignorance.
Admitting you don't know.
Yes. In this unbelievably complicated world where tech and politics merge everywhere, we often operate under this dangerous illusion that we know much more than we actually do.
It's easy, isn't it? Read a headline, scroll through a social media feed, and feel like you've got it figured out.
Exactly. And that overconfidence is a grave mistake, according to the sources.
Yeah.
We must understand the limits of our own knowledge. We have to actively resist that urge to oversimplify these incredibly complex problems. Accepting you don't know everything, really admitting your ignorance is the first step. It's the prerequisite for being willing to actually learn and adapt.
Okay, so if we need to constantly learn and adapt, what about the next generation? That brings us to lesson 19. If facts are constantly being updated by AI or maybe deliberately manipulated by bad actors, what should schools even be teaching anymore?
The insight here is pretty clear. Traditional fact-based education is becoming obsolete. Information itself is cheap, it's abundant.
You can Google anything.
You can. So instead of just focusing on memorizing facts, which are easily accessible or might be outdated tomorrow, schools need to focus on foundational, uniquely human skills, things like critical thinking and emotional intelligence.
Why those two specifically?
Well, critical thinking allows young people to sift through information, to distinguish reliable sources from propaganda, misinformation, deep fakes, which is just crucial in this age of algorithmic manipulation we talked about.
Makes sense. And emotional intelligence.
That helps them handle the stress, the uncertainty, the anxiety of a perpetually changing job market, shifting identities. It teaches them how to deal with change itself, hopefully without suffering a kind of psychological collapse. Teaching adaptation, resilience, that's paramount.
That's the external preparation, but let's bring it inward now to the quest for meaning. That's highlighted in lessons 20 and 21. Humans seem hardwired for narrative, don't we? We want a clear, compelling story for our lives.
We absolutely do. And this is where the sources offer a really powerful, maybe slightly sobering warning. We shouldn't expect life to fit neatly into a simple narrative, especially one with a guaranteed happy ending.
The stories we tell ourselves can backfire.
They can. The expectation that, say, hard work always equals happiness, or that life must follow a specific path, college, career, marriage, kids, retirement, in that order. These rigid stories can be sources of profound unhappiness when reality inevitably fails to match the fiction we've constructed.
So the actionable step isn't to find a better story, but maybe to stop demanding a perfect narrative in the first place and instead find meaning somewhere else.
Exactly. Find meaning in the present moment.
Okay.
And this leads us right to the final and maybe the most critical tool suggested by the author of these insights, mindfulness and meditation.
Ah, the personal practice.
Yes, this is presented as the practical solution. The way to handle a confusing world where your internal self is just constantly bombarded by external data, noise, manipulation attempts.
So how does it help according to the sources?
They suggest that by cultivating this practice, observing your own mind without judgment, just seeing your thoughts and feelings arise and pass away for what they are, you can find clarity, find strength.
Yeah.
It becomes a tool for maintaining your sanity, your inner balance in an age of profound confusion. And the author's own very public commitment to daily meditation is presented as testament to its value, almost like the ultimate form of self-sovereignty in this era.
Self-sovereignty. I like that.
That intense self-awareness, knowing what you know,
Mm.
being okay with what you don't know, understanding the stories you tell yourself, and being aware of the data you're constantly generating, that seems to be the only truly stable foundation left in the 21st century. It allows you, perhaps, to become the observer of the digital age rather than just the manipulated output.
It really does bring everything full circle, doesn't it? It ties all that external chaos, the technology, the politics, right back to our internal response, our inner world.
It seems to.
We spent this deep dive talking about how AI has this potential to know us better than we know ourselves, predicting, maybe even manipulating our desires based on our data profile. So if that's the case, does cultivating presence, observing our minds through mindfulness, finding meaning right here in the moment, and claiming that internal awareness, does that become the ultimate, maybe the essential act of reclaiming sovereignty over the self?
That's a powerful thought to end on.
Something for you to mull over as you navigate the noise. and the immense potential of
Yeah.
this new century.